We're doing great. Thanks for joining today. We're going to be discussing a really fun topic, super important, how to get a U.S. student visa. So we'll be talking about that today. So it's really, really important because getting a student visa is the final step of the process besides getting on a flight and actually arriving. But the last step, so you've studied hard, you've mapped out your plan, you've applied, you've done everything needed in order to take the next step, which is actually studying abroad. So in that process, the preparing and doing everything you can before you arrive, this is actually the last step. So it's super, super important. And I've seen over my years, lots of good quality people just stumble at this step. So let's get into it. So today we're going to be covering, in that topic, we'll be covering a couple things. We'll be covering the process needed to get a visa. So what are the steps of getting a visa? So just map it out so that we all understand what the process looks like. Second, what will happen that will lead to a visa rejection? So why are some visa requests rejected? Number three, how to schedule a visa interview. This is actually kind of a processing step. Just get it done. How to prepare for a visa interview. This is actually very, very important. And we'll go into some level of detail, but we're going to be creating a separate video to discuss it like in its entirety, but we will still go over how to prepare for a visa interview. Then last, what to do with that visa. So we will cover that process. So the first thing is, what are the steps needed in order to get a visa? What does that look like from beginning to end? So honestly, the first thing that you have to do is apply to a program and get admitted. So you've done all this research, you've identified some schools that you would be happy going to. Great. So step number one is you apply. So you find the right program and you apply. So this is important because it'd be useless applying to a school that you just would not be happy at. I know that we discussed that in another webinar, another video, but make sure that you find a school that you could afford, one you could get into, and one that could help you get the career that you want, and one that you would be happy studying at. And so that's what you look for in the right school. But once you've identified the school or multiple schools, you apply and then you get admitted. At this point, honestly, it could be multiple schools. So it could be one school or it could be 5 schools. I don't always recommend just applying to one school. If you do just apply to one school, just make sure that's one that fits all 4 of those check boxes. I've seen some people where they apply to one school, get denied because they're not qualified. Then they're like, dang it, I need a plan B. So then they're kind of in a scramble to get a plan B. And so just try to avoid that situation. So try to apply to multiple schools, have what they call a fallback option when you apply. So apply, get admitted. And again, this could be multiple schools. Step number 2, once you get your letter of admissions, and at this point you could be sitting on like 5 letters of admission. So let's say you apply to 5 different schools. Let's say you got denied by one of them because it was your reach school. And so then you got admitted by 4. Great, you got 4 letters of admissions. Then next, you pay your deposit and receive your I-20. Now this is where it could be kind of expensive to pay a deposit. Depends on the school. Some schools, there are actually, truthfully, some schools that require 0 deposit. It's weird, I know, but there are some schools that require 0 deposit. There are some schools that require a deposit of like $9,000 US, which is also ridiculous. And so you want whatever the school requires, it's what they require. So I'm not here to consult with universities or colleges and tell them what their deposit should be, even though I will tell you the deposit should be about $3,000 US. So pay your deposit. then once you pay your deposit, you'll receive a document called an I-20. So an I-20, this is actually pretty important. The I-20 is a document from the university or college to you and to, more importantly, the US State Department saying, we give this student permission to study at our university. So it goes beyond what a letter of admissions could do. It says that they are inviting you to study in the United States. So that document technically is called an I-20. I won't get into it, but universities and colleges, they need a document called an I-17 in order to issue the I-20. And so universities and colleges, heck, and even English programs, they need to go through certification processes and register with the Department of State in the United States in order to then issue these I-20s. So issuing I-20s is a very, very important step. And like I said, that usually happens after you pay your deposit. COVID, not fun times for like most people around the world. One positive thing that came out of COVID is, well, during COVID, universities did not feel comfortable sending paper I-20s around the world. They just figured that was a risk of sending disease, COVID, all around the world. And so they went from paper I-20s to digital I-20s. And so now universities issue digital I-20s, which means that you get your I-20 instantly. You pay your deposit, and then within like 24 hours, you'll get a digital copy of your I-20. In the past, you would apply, get admitted, pay your deposit, then you would have to wait like 2-3 weeks for your paper I-20 to show up in the mail. And honestly, even from a school standpoint, that was a pain. So digital I-20s, actually awesome. I love that stuff. So once you get your I-20 in the mail, then you schedule your visa interview. Actually, let me touch on something about the I-20s. You can actually receive multiple I-20s. So let's say, again, scenario, you apply to 5 schools, you got admitted to 4. As long as you have enough money to pay the deposit for all 4 schools, that's great. You can receive 4 I-20s, doesn't matter. And so at this point, you could have 4 I-20s, not a problem. Heck, you could have 20 I-20s, and that's not a problem. Just as long as you have enough money to cover your deposits, and 99.99% of the time, those deposits are non-refundable. So it's not as if you could get 20 I-20s, move forward with the one, and then ask for a refund for the rest of them. Like, nope, that money is lost. Well, I shouldn't say lost. That money is deposited in that university. So that money will actually go towards your tuition, yes, but just moving forward with that one school, okay? So once you have your I-20, then you schedule your visa interview at the local US Embassy. You can go online. I'll show you how to do that here in a bit. But then you prepare. And actually, that's where I want to spend most of the time on this video, is talking about how to prepare for an interview. So you schedule your interview with the US Embassy. There's going to be a step-by-step guide with your I-20 documents that you receive, or your agent has been through the process before. Hopefully they should have. So you can just work with them to then schedule your visa interview. So you schedule your visa interview, and then you prepare. Then honestly, the last step is you rock your visa interview. Visa interviews, they could be short. I've heard of visa interviews. I've had students where their visa interview was like 20 seconds. I've had some where it's been closer to 10, 15 minutes. So regardless, you got to do your visa interview. And that is an important, like, that's what it all comes down to, is having your visa interview and what they think of you. So those are the steps on how to get a visa. So that was an overview. So that's the process. Okay, so second thing we want to cover, why are visas rejected? So there's two big reasons why visas are, well, if you show up without the right documentation, they won't reject you. They'll just turn you away and say, okay, you didn't bring everything, let's reschedule, which that's not great, but it doesn't hurt you. That just means that you just rescheduled. It's not as if like that is going to hurt you the next time you interview. So show up with all your documents. But there's two big reasons why visas are rejected. The first one is security risk. Now, what I mean by security risk is if there's someone who the U.S. State Department, so the people interviewing you at the U.S. Embassy, if there's someone who they think is going to do damage or harm to the United States, they will be rejected. And so how do they determine that? Honestly, they'll look at your social media. They'll look at your social media. They'll look at your history. They'll look at your criminal background. And if there's anything that shows that, yes, there's a risk, you will be rejected. And that is very, very hard to recover from. So rightfully so, because even as an American, I wouldn't want someone to come to the United States if they're a spy, if they're a terrorist, like if they're going to do damage to the United States, yeah, honestly, we don't want them here for understandable reasons. And so that is the first and big reason why someone will be rejected if they are a security risk. And so does this happen? Yes, I've seen it happen. Should have there been some students that got through the cracks? Yes, absolutely. And so the U.S. State Department is very strict about this. And so one of the things that they do evaluate is which U.S. embassy you are interviewing at. Because there are some U.S. embassies in certain countries where they do tend to reject more people because of this. So you also have to know which U.S. embassy you're going to be interviewing at. So that's the first big reason, is a security risk. The second is a migration risk. Do they think you're just going to show up in the United States and try to stay there as long as possible? Is it clear as day that your main motivation is to move to the United States? Because if so, that will also lead to a visa rejection. And that does happen. I'm not going to name the country, but there is one country in particular where it's pretty common for students to come to the United States, withdraw from classes, and just disappear. They'll just go work in fields. They'll go work in cities that don't require documentation to get a job. They'll just come to the United States and just migrate and disappear. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. If someone comes here on a student visa, we want their plan to be to come here and study. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. So those are the two big reasons why visas will get rejected: either a security reason, security risk, or a migration risk. Like, those are the two big reasons. So what can you do about that? Like, what can you do to make sure that you're not dinged for those two? The first one is, honestly, don't affiliate with terrorists. Don't be a terrorist. Like, that's like the big thing. Don't be a spy. Don't be a terrorist. Like, that's understandable. Don't post a bunch of stuff that's anti-United States. Like, don't be a jerk. Like, for example, let's say I was going to go study in Germany. Germany's awesome. Like, yeah, if I post a bunch of like anti-German stuff, yeah, of course I should expect to be denied, because why would they want me if I hate them? So like the United States, or at least just be neutral about it, and don't do terrorist stuff. Like, plain and simple. That's what you do. On that one. The second one, avoiding a migration risk. This is a little bit more tricky, because the way that they identify migration risk are a couple things. One, they may ask, do you have relatives in the United States? And so let's say you're trying to go study in Seattle. So if you have family in Seattle and you're trying to go live in Seattle, that's a migration risk. Why? Because let's say you're studying and let's say you fail out of classes. Yeah, what they don't want is you to fail out of classes and refuse to leave the country, and instead you can go live with your relative who is up there in Seattle. So that's what they do not want. So that's one way to view a migration risk. Number two is what type of school you're going to. Like, is it one with like the minimum barriers of entry? So is it like really easy to get admitted, no deposit, and anyone could go there? Like, if that's the case, they may ask other questions. The person at the U.S. Embassy may ask further questions to assess how much you're dedicated to your studies. And we'll go over how to discuss that if that's the case. So yes, you want to avoid showing that, yes, you're just trying to migrate. And so those are the two big reasons. Okay. So let's talk about how to schedule a visa interview. Okay. So there's a website that you can go to. It's just even if you just Google U.S. Embassy, like, you'll be taken to their website, and you can just go to their website. It's nice and simple. I'm sharing my screen for a sec. All right, hope you're seeing my screen. It's awesome. You get to see stuff that I look for. So one of the things I'm going to show you is, first of all, the U.S. embassies. How long does it take to schedule a visa interview? Now, this is something that varies depending on the location. Some U.S. embassies have a very short time. Some wait time. Some U.S. embassies have very long wait time. And so this is a spreadsheet that we maintain. What the spreadsheet does is it tracks every U.S. embassy in the entire world. And so this is updated regularly once a week. And because that's how often the U.S. embassies update their data. And this spreadsheet shows the U.S. wait time for every U.S. embassy. So let's say you're interested in Lagos. Okay, it's going to say the wait time is 212 days, meaning you get your I-20, you go to the website, and it says, okay, cool, we could schedule you for an interview. That's 212 days away, okay? But don't be disheartened. I'm going to talk about how to get around this. Let's say you're in Kenya. Okay, 65 days for Nairobi. Okay, so some U.S. embassies have long wait times, but then as you can see up here, there's like Doha, Qatar, 1 day. Mexico, Guadalajara, 1 day. There's a lot of them with 1 days. Over here I have some statistics. So about 62% of U.S. embassies can offer a visa interview within 2 weeks. Okay. So what you do is you come to the site. I can put a link on the live post, and you can find your U.S. embassy. Here is technically the URL that you can go to, travel.state.gov/content/travel. And this is where you type in, let's say, Berlin. Let's say you can go to the U.S. embassy in Berlin. It'll show the different types of visas. So a student visa is what they call an F visa. So an F1 visa. So it says 14 days. Okay? So that's what you're looking for, is F visa. It also has it redundantly down here. Interview waiver students. I'll talk about the waiver here in a sec as well. Is 1 day. So, but let's say you're looking at New Delhi, great place. You're looking at 64 days for a visa interview. For the interview waiver, it's 4 days. So that is technically where you can look it up. Nairobi, 78 days, interview waiver, 1 day. So, okay, so first, let's discuss the waivers. And up here, this spreadsheet is shared with a lot of U.S. universities, and so they'll usually jump on here and look at the data. So it's actually kind of fun. So this is a fun little resource that we control. Okay, so first of all, the visa waiver program. That's this column right here, VWP, the visa waiver program. So what this is a new initiative from the U.S. State Department that came about during COVID. What they realized was, oh my gosh, there's this huge backlog. Instead of requiring everyone to do a visa interview, can we set up a process by which we're able to see someone's documents and look at their social media, and with that have confidence that yes, they are indeed not a migration risk and not a security risk, and issue them a student visa. So it's not for all U.S. embassies by any means. It's actually like 20. So if you're going to one of those 20 U.S. embassies, you're in luck. And so you're able to submit your documents online and not have to do a face-to-face visa interview. And so that, if you do that, you're in luck. Make sure your documents are squeaky clean. Make sure that your statement of intent, which is the letter from you to the university explaining why you want to study there and why they should admit you, why you should deserve to study there. Make sure that that is squeaky clean, clear as day. Your resume is up to date. Make sure everything is up to date, because that is easy for them to deny, but it also means that you don't have a visa interview. So that is one thing to address. The second thing to address is there are some countries that have multiple U.S. embassies. So let's say one U.S. embassy has like a 40-day wait time and the other one has like a 20-day wait time. Cool. It might be worth your time to actually travel to the one that has a 20-day visa wait time. So that's just something to consider. We also do have some students where they'll travel to other countries to interview with the U.S. Embassy. Let's say, case in point, sometimes there will be someone studying here in the United States and their passport is good, their I-20s are good, but for one reason or another, their visa is going to expire, their student visa. What they'll do is they have to leave the United States, or historically they've had to leave the United States to update their visa. So what they do is travel down to Mexico or travel up to Canada to technically get out of the country, interview, then come back. So that's actually a pretty common practice. The U.S. State Department doesn't really care, just as long as they're not in the United States. So that's a pretty common practice. So it is okay to go interview at a U.S. embassy that's not the one closest to your house. So that is one thing to consider. Okay, the other thing is, let's say, again, our friends in Lagos, let's say it's 212 days out. So you do everything, you get your I-20, and you're like, dang it, it's 212 days out before I can actually sit for my visa interview. Okay, so then what you do there is you schedule whatever time, 212 days out, you schedule that visa interview, but then you message, like you'll have a point of contact at the U.S. Embassy at that point. You email back and you say, thanks, I appreciate this date. I look forward to the interview. Unfortunately, my start date for my program begins sooner than that. Here, let me stop sharing that way. You could actually see me. So then you email and say, my start date starts within 60 days. It's absurd to be like, oh, my start date is in 1 week. Like, that's never going to work. But when you tell them when your actual start date is, and you show them the letter of admissions. So you say, I appreciate it, but unfortunately, my start date is August 21st, because that's an actual real start date, looking at my calendar. So you email them and say, okay, my start date is August 21st. I request an expedited scheduling of my visa interview. So then what will happen is they'll get back to you, then they'll move it forward. So instead of waiting 212 days, you may wait 30, 45 days. So that is how you process that. So if your visa wait time is forever out there, yeah, that's how you get it done. So it takes a little bit of communication and a little bit of sympathy and understanding from the U.S. Embassy, but they almost always grant it. But again, what they don't want to see is like, oh my gosh, my program starts next week. I need I need an interview ASAP. Like that's never going to happen. So that is how you schedule a visa interview. Okay, let's talk about how, like, the actual question. So how to prepare for a visa interview. So there are some services out there. Like there's a company, practiceinterview.com. They're a good one. The college that the school or college that issues the I-20, they are not supposed to advise on how to do the interview. They're not supposed to. Third parties, yes, third parties could absolutely help. But the university or the college that issues the I-20 is not supposed to help. And so just keep that in mind. And also when doing the interview, the main thing that they want is honesty and sincerity. So they want honest answers and they want sincerity. So the biggest piece of advice I always give is always tell the truth. Always tell the truth. Because if you lie, you're not just going to get denied, but you will get blocked for all future interviews. And so let's say they ask, do you have any relatives that live in the United States? If you say, no, I don't, but the records show that you do, you just lied to the U.S. State Department, you're going to get denied your visa there, and you're going to be blocked from all future travels to the United States. So it's pretty severe, strong ramifications. So make sure that you always tell the truth and be sincere, because what they don't want is someone who it's clear as day that they just rehearsed their answers, because they do see that as well. And we understand that it can be nerve-wracking because for a lot of international students, this is their first time talking with an American, or maybe having a conversation with an American in English. And so that alone can be nerve-wracking. Yeah, I've been to a lot of countries, and trying to talk with a local in their local language, sometimes, especially at first, it can be nerve-wracking. I remember my first time. So it can be nerve-wracking. So they try to understand that as well. But if you come in clear as day, rehearsed, like that will also lead to a rejection. So overall, those are the two biggest guidelines I have. Always tell the truth and be sincere. But some of the questions are common. Like, for example, how did you find the school? And so the wording of that, how did you find the school? I know that in some cultures, in some countries, that means like, oh, what did you think of the school? Is it a good school? Is it a bad school? That's not what they're asking. They're asking, how did you find out about the school? And so they want to know, did you do research? Did you find a friend? Did you have an agent? Whatever their answer is. And so when responding, what I recommend is one quick answer, a one sentence explanation. So quick answer, quick explanation. So if they ask, how did you find the school? You can say, oh, my agent. Great. But then you say, they helped me find it, but then I did a lot of research and I fell in love with the school and the location. Something like that. Because if you're using an agent, what they don't want is they don't want you to be applying for the school that you have no idea anything about the school. So if you don't know the first thing about the school, that's a red flag, and that will lead to a rejection. Or it could lead to a rejection. So how did you find the school? If it's a friend, I have a friend that goes there. I did a lot of research. Great school, and I can't wait to join my friend. It's going to be a fun time. So that's one of the common questions is, how did you find the school? Another common question, how will you finance your studies? So if it's your parents, if it's from your self-savings, whatever it is, just explain what it is. By this point, the bank statements will already have been seen, like the U.S. State Department, the embassy will be looking at those bank statements and the financial support form. They'll be looking at those two documents when they're interviewing you. So tell the truth. Say, oh, my parents. Like, oh, I have a full scholarship from my government. Whatever the answer is, give it, then give your explanation. So if it's your parents, say, oh, for my parents, my dad's a doctor and my mom stays at home, but they've saved over the years and to be able to send me abroad. Because with that, sometimes they'll ask follow-up questions. So for example, how did you find this school? If you say my agent, I did research and I love the area, they may ask, hey, where's the school? Like, if you don't know where the school is, boom, you're done. So they may ask, okay, what can you tell me about the school? So with the financing, if it's your parents, one of the common follow-up questions is, what do your parents do for a living? And for this question, you kind of have to get in the mind of an American, because there's one country I love, Kazakhstan, you're in my heart. Everyone there is a business person. Like, it doesn't matter if they're working at McDonald's or if they're working as an executive in oil and gas. They're a business person. And so it's not enough to say, oh, my dad is a business person. Like, no, you got to go into depth about that. We had a student who unfortunately got denied because his mom actually owns a clothing distribution chain, like very wealthy, great distribution chain. But the student left it at, my mom is in fashion retail. Okay, does she work at a mall? Like, no offense to anyone who works at a mall. Actually, I have a lot of good friends that work there. But like, do they work at a department store? Like, what's going on here? Like, give us more depth. And so those are two of the big common questions. So how are you financing your studies? How did you find out about the university? Do you have any family or friends that live in the United States? So do you have any family that lives in the United States? That's a simple yes or no question. If it's a no, say no, I don't know anyone I don't have any family that lives in the United States. If it's a yes, say, yeah, I have a dad that lives in Detroit. Like, spell the situation, but then reinforce that your main reason for studying in the United States or going to the United States is to do your studies. And so let's say your dad does live in Detroit and you're going to be studying in California. Say, like, yeah, I have a dad. My dad lives in Detroit and I may see him for a holiday, but my main reason to go out there is to study. And so, yes, address it, tell the truth, say, yes, I have a relative that lives here, but my main purpose for studying is to actually study and to graduate. Okay, so always tell the truth there. And again, short answer, short explanation. A common question also is, what are your plans after graduation? Because this is where they're trying to assess if you're just trying to move to the United States. And so what they're trying to determine is, do you have enough, is part of your plan to study in the United States, or is your plan to go study in the United States and then come back? There are some US embassies where no matter what the answer is to this one, they'll default think that everyone's just trying to get to the United States. Yeah, there's quite a few of those US embassies. But so what they'll ask is, what are your plans after graduation? And this is where you say, oh, I hope to do OPT. In case if you don't know, OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. So when you graduate, you could remain in the United States and work in the United States for 1 year if your studies are STEM certified, so science, technology, engineering, math, so something like computer science, engineering, heck, even maybe data analytics, depends on the university. Instead of 1 year, it's extended for 3 years. So you could work for 1 year or 3 years on your student visa through a program called OPT. again, optional practical training. So you do that, and then what do you do after that? Return home, or at least that's what the U.S. Embassy wants to be your plan. If things change and all of a sudden you go from OPT to what they call an H-1B visa, this is like you're allowed to work in the United States and your visa sponsor is your company. That's H-1B. Then after that's the green card. So if that happens to be the case, let it happen. Fine, cool. Life changes, we understand. But we don't want that to be your plan as you're coming to the United States. What we want your plan to be is come to the United States, kick butt in academics, graduate, yay, awesome. Maybe do OPT, but then come back home. And so when they ask, so what's your plan after graduation? That's when you say, oh, cool. Yeah, that's 4 years out, so I've given it some thought. I hope to do OPT. Like, that sounds awesome. I would love to work in America with Americans for a year, but then ultimately I want to return home here, get married, and improve my country. And so let's say you're from Kenya. You could be like, oh yeah, no, I want to go study, graduate, do 1 year of OPT, but then return home to Nairobi because I really know that we could use the help in building our economy here in Kenya. Great, something like that. Again, you want to practice your answers, but you don't want to sound rehearsed. And so what I just said, don't write it down and memorize it, then go in there and have that be your answer. But make sure that it's make sure it's truthful and something along those lines. So those are the common questions. There are other questions that will pop up. Like probably the hardest one for students to answer that I hear is, or that's out there is, what will you do if I reject you for a visa today? This is where they're testing your dedication to studying in the United States. So what they don't want is like, oh, I'll go to Canada. Like, they're going to call your bluff, because what they're going to do is deny you and have fun in Canada. Yeah. So what the strongest answer here is, oh, I'd be heartbroken because this is like my dream. Like, I really want to study in the United States. So honestly, I would reschedule for another visa. I would figure out why I got rejected, what happened, but then I would go re-interview for another visa. Like, that's a good, healthy answer, because what that means is, like, studying in the United States is your plan A. It definitely is your plan A. Yeah, sure, you have a backup plan of like Canada, Australia, wherever, but you really want the United States. And it's not to the point of like, oh my gosh, I will do anything to get to the United States, because then that's viewed as a migration risk. So you kind of have to walk the line of, yeah, I want to study in the United States, but I'm not like overly obsessed with it. Like, I'm going to die if I don't study in the United States. Like, so they want a healthy medium of, yeah, I really, really want to study in the United States. It's my plan A. I'd be heartbroken. I would give the interview one more shot. And then if I got denied twice, then I would go to a plan B. Okay. So those are the common questions. Yeah, just because I brought it up a couple times, let's talk about what the process is. Heaven forbid you're denied for a student visa. So if you're denied, they're supposed to give you a reason why. So what will happen is you'll get your visa, and there will be a paper attached to it, and it will give you a code as to why you got denied. Then you just look up that code, or at least that's common practice. So usually it's the biggest reason why someone will get denied is a migration risk. Because at this point of the process, you've shown that academically, you're good enough to study. English-wise, you're good enough to study. Financially, you're good enough to study. So the last thing that they're looking for is in your heart of hearts, are you going for the right reasons? You're not going there to cause trouble, but as a security risk. You're not going there to cause trouble as a migration risk. So honestly, if someone is denied, it's because of a migration risk. And so you have to think of the questions that were asked, what your responses were, and okay, what can I do to prove that yes, I indeed do want to study and I don't plan on migrating. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like there's no silver bullet to this one. And so you could contact the school that you're trying to go to and let them know. And they might be able to send an email or make a phone call to help smooth it over, but they cannot guarantee an embassy, a visa, because ultimately it's going to be the call of the U.S. Embassy. So if you were denied because of a migration risk, okay, you need to think, do I have a relative that lives in the area that I'm hoping to study, and is that why? Was I not able to show that, yes, I indeed plan on coming back? Because that is actually one of the things that they look for is like, do you have enough reason to come back to the country? And so like, let's say you have no family in your home country. Let's say you're from India and you have no family in India and all your family migrated to the United States. Yeah, that's a huge migration risk right there, because they're thinking if you go to the United States, graduate, work, finish out your OPT, and it's time to go back home to India, you're going to be like, you know what? I'm good. I'm staying. So that's a risk. So you need to show that you have more than enough reason to come back to your home country. And those main reasons are family or a job. So if you have a family business, awesome. If you have family or loved ones in the area, awesome. Heck, one answer that we've seen that's been hilarious is, oh, no, so my plan is go study in the United States, do OPT, come back because I have an arranged marriage and I'm supposed to start that in 6 years. Like, okay, cool. Enjoy your arranged marriage. That's awesome. That's a part of the plan. And so whatever the reason is, make sure that they know that you are sincere. So if you follow those guidelines, you should be able to get a visa. So again, the process, first you find the school, you apply, you get admitted, you pay your deposit, you get your I-20, you then schedule your visa interview, prepare, go ace your visa interview, go do well. So that's the process. And again, visas are rejected for two main reasons, either a security risk, as in like a terrorist, a spy, you're going to do damage to the United States, which is totally understandable. Or there's a migration risk. They think that you're just trying to move to the United States. So those are the two main reasons why you get denied. You schedule your visa interview online. The instructions will be in the I-20. It's just the U.S. State Department. You can even go down to the U.S. Embassy and talk with the secretary there. They can help you out. Then how to prepare for your visa interview. Review common visa questions. Use a third party to prepare. Practiceinterview.com, again, is a good resource. But yeah, you practice your visa interview. Be prepared, but don't be rehearsed. So you need to walk the fine line there. But yeah, that's how you get your student visa to study in the United States. So hopefully that has been helpful. So join us next time. Next time we'll be talking about scholarships and how to finance your studies. So that will be on Tuesday. So that is also a very, very heavy topic. So look forward to talking with you guys about that then. All right, take care. Have a great weekend.